Today, we're diving deep into some really technical language that just absolutely shattered the Christian world back in the 16th century.
Yeah, and we're not talking about, skirmishes over land or politics.
No, not at all. We are analyzing a conflict over legal definitions,
hmm
specifically the definition of how a person gets right with God. We are taking a deep dive into the doctrine of justification.
And this is so much more than just some academic theology. This is really the core existential question that drives, well, pretty much all religious thought. The
Right.
sources we're looking at, they all zero in on this one fundamental problem that every human faces. How can a sinner, an unjust person, ever possibly withstand the judgment of a holy and just God?
Exactly. And the sources, they really lay out the gravity of this using that ancient question from the Psalms. If you, Lord, should mark iniquities, who could stand?
And the answer, of course, is no one.
No one. An unjust person can't stand before a just God. So for any of us to survive that kind of divine judgment, God has to somehow declare us just.
And that right there, that's the absolute center of the whole controversy. The grounds, the basis upon which God declares anyone just.
So the whole argument really boils down to two completely different paths.
That's right. Do we have to first become inherently just, meaning, genuinely righteous inside ourselves? Or does God declare us just before we are in ourselves actually just, based on something external?
That distinction right there, becoming versus declaring, that is the very hinge upon which the entire Reformation turned.
It is.
Martin Luther, he famously staked everything on this point. He declared this doctrine to be, and I'm quoting here, the article with and by which the church stands and without which it falls. So we really need to give you a clear roadmap of those two opposing systems.
Do it.
Okay, let's start by unpacking the first of these two great camps. This is the one that broke from the historic tradition, the Reformed or Protestant view.
And this whole view centers on what the sources call forensic justification.
Forensic, that word's important.
Oh, it's crucial. When you hear forensic, you should immediately think courtroom. Think legal proceeding.
Like forensic evidence.
Exactly like that. Forensic justification means God renders a verdict, he's acting as a judge, and he declares us righteous in a purely legal sense.
So to change in my legal status, not necessarily change in my internal spiritual health at that exact moment.
Precisely. The declaration is based entirely on evidence and merit that is located outside of us. John Calvin gave the defining phrase for this view. He said justification is when we are deemed or regarded as righteous.
Regarded as.
Accepted into God's favor as if we had lived the perfect life ourselves. It's a dual process, really. The forgiveness of our sins is coupled with the imputation of the righteousness of Christ.
Okay, let's nail down that word right there. Imputation.
It's a legal term for transfer.
A transfer.
It means Christ's perfect record is transferred to your account, and your debt, your sin, is transferred to Christ's account, and it's paid for on the cross.
So it's like a massive accounting swap.
It is the ultimate accounting swap, and it leads directly to Luther's most famous paradox. Simul justus et peccator.
Simultaneously just and sinner.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, wait. That still sounds like a complete contradiction for the listener.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, how can you be just and a sinner at the exact same time without making God out to be dishonest?
It's a great question, and it's because the terms refer to two different realms. If we consider you in yourself, internally, inherently, you remain a sinner.
Right. I still battle temptation. I still fall short.
Daily. That is the peccator part. But simultaneously, because of that legal transfer, the imputation of Christ's perfect righteousness, you are considered justus or just in the sight of God.
It's a really powerful analogy. It's sort of like being guilty of a crime, but then receiving a complete, perfect presidential pardon. You are still, inherently the person who did the crime.
Yes.
But legally, the court system declares you absolved. Your legal status has changed.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That analogy works perfectly because it also highlights the exact point of fierce critique from the Roman Catholic Church. They called this framework a legal fiction. They argued that God's integrity would be compromised if he just declared an unrighteous person righteous. God has to tell the truth, right? So if you are still inherently a sinner, how can he declare you just?
And this is where the reformers introduce what they called alien righteousness,
Or extra nose.
meaning outside of us.
Right. They're essentially saying, yes, God only declares righteous those who possess a perfect righteousness, but we possess it externally.
It's not our own.
It's not our own. We possess it because Christ earned it for us. The ground of our justification isn't simply Christ's death, which pays the penalty. It's also his active obedience throughout his entire life.
His perfect performance.
His flawless keeping of the law. That is what's applied to our record. It's an alien righteousness because it belongs to Christ. It is alien to us. We rely entirely on Christ's perfect resume, not our own.
Okay. Now we flip to the other side, the Roman Catholic view, which was formalized later at the Council of Trent. And here the entire methodology just shifts.
It's a total shift from a legal declaration to a process of internal change.
Right. Rome agrees that, grace, faith, and Christ are all necessary for salvation.
They do.
But they insist these are necessary but not sufficient conditions.
And their whole focus is on the Latin verb justificar, which they understand as to make righteous. For God to truly declare you just, you must first be inherently actually just.
So it requires a physical change within the soul.
It does. And the process for this is very structured, very sacramental. The sources detail that the entry point, what they call the instrumental cause, is the sacrament of baptism.
Okay.
Through baptism, Christ's righteousness is delivered, not legally credited to you, but infused into your soul.
Infused, like an injection.
Exactly. It's poured in or injected like spiritual medicine. If imputation is like receiving a perfect grade sheet, a legal document infusion is like receiving a powerful spiritual shot of motivation and strength.
And once this grace is infused, the baptized person must then actively cooperate with that grace.
Yes, cooperate through good works to make that righteousness permanent and, well, inherent.
So justification isn't a one-time declaration. It's a lifelong process of growth and cooperation toward becoming actually righteous.
Yeah.
But what happens when you fail? Because, we all fail.
And that's the problem. Sin gets categorized. Venial sin, they say, only wounds the infused grace. But mortal sin-grave offenses, they kill the justifying grace completely.
You lose your justified status.
You lose it, even though you might still retain a basic intellectual faith.
So if you commit a mortal sin and you lose that justifying grace, you're going to need a restoration plan. This seems essential to the Roman Catholic system.
It is, and that is the sacrament of penance. They sometimes called it the second plank of justification after the shipwreck of sin.
Wow.
And penance, it requires multiple steps. Sincere confession, genuine contrition, priestly absolution, and finally, works of satisfaction.
Works of satisfaction. These are the penalties, right?
Yeah.
The penances that you do to procure merit and restore the relationship.
Exactly.
Okay. Now we get to the financial engine of the Middle Ages. Merit. This merit, earned through those works of satisfaction, is called congruous merit, or meritum de congruo.
This concept is tricky. It's merit that's not, let's say, worthy enough to obligate God to reward it. You haven't earned it perfectly, but it is fitting or suitable for God in his generosity to reward it.
So this is the human element added to grace.
It is. God supplies the grace, but we have to utilize it to earn this fitting merit.
And this emphasis on self-earned merit is precisely what set Luther on fire. He called these scholastic concepts vain figments.
He did. He saw them as fundamentally undermining the sufficiency of Christ because they forced the believer to always look inward for assurance rather than outward to Christ.
And this reliance on cooperation and works of satisfaction, it just set the stage for the most famous scandal of all.
The commodification of surplus merit.
Right. Because the system demanded works of satisfaction, and some people, the saints, they performed what are called works of supererogation.
Works above and beyond what was strictly required. They did extra credit.
They accumulated a surplus. And that surplus merit became the infamous treasury of merit, which connects directly to the start of the Reformation, the indulgence controversy.
Right. Indulgences were, in essence, church documents that allowed a person to draw on this surplus merit accumulated by Christ and the saints.
And apply it to their own works of satisfaction.
Or even apply it to the suffering souls of their deceased relatives in purgatory to cut their time short.
This is where we have to bring in Johann Tetzel. He was notorious for his crass, unauthorized marketing of indulgences.
He was.
The sources share this anecdotal marketing jingle he allegedly used to encourage donations. Every time a coin in the coffer rings, a soul from purgatory springs.
And that jingle, whether it's exactly true or not, it just perfectly captures the commercialization of penance and satisfaction. It shows how deeply this concept of earning and transferring merit was woven into the fabric of daily piety.
Right, and Luther, at least initially, he wasn't trying to start a revolution.
Not at all. He was a troubled monk. He was deeply disturbed by the thought that people were being promised eternal assurance based on a financial transaction rather than simply trusting in Christ.
Okay, let's pull back for a second and just isolate the core theological difference. Because both systems, they agree on the need for Christ, the need for grace.
I do.
The entire Eye of the Reformation tornado was centered on one single word.
Alone.
Alone.
That is the word that defines the split. The Reformers insisted on sola gratia, grace alone, sola fide, faith alone, and soli Christo, Christ alone. For the Reformed tradition, faith is the instrumental cause. It's the hand that receives the gift.
And this is where we have to be really careful with our definitions. Faith, in the Reformed sense, is absolutely not a meritorious work.
No, it's crucial to get that. You don't earn justification by having a strong faith.
So faith is just the non-meritorious means, the instrument that connects us to Christ's sufficient external merit.
Precisely. But this perspective immediately raises an apparent conflict right there in the Bible, which we have to address.
Right, because you have Paul saying, we are justified by faith apart from works in Romans 3.
But then you have James saying, a man is justified by works and not by faith only, in James 2. It sounds like a head-on collision.
And to make it even worse, both apostles used Abraham to prove their point.
They do, and that's where the synthesis, which John Calvin articulated so clearly, comes in. He argued they're speaking about two different types of justification.
Two different types.
Yes. Paul is talking about the imputation of righteousness. That initial legal declaration that was made when Abraham first believed God way back in Genesis 15.
Okay, and James.
James is talking about the manifestation. The proof of that righteousness, which was demonstrated years later when Abraham offered Isaac in Genesis 22. James is really asking, what does real faith look like?
It looks like obedience.
It looks like obedience.
And that is where that famous balancing phrase comes from. Justification is by faith alone, but not by a faith that is alone.
Exactly. True faith is fides viva, a vital, living faith. And it always, inevitably, produces works. If there are no works, then the faith is dead, meaning it was never saving faith to begin with.
But those works, the fruit,
they contribute absolutely nothing to the root of justification itself. The justified person works, but is not justified by the work.
So to really understand what separates that kind of saving faith from just, mere agreement, the Reformers broke faith down into three components.
Right. The first two are, I think, common knowledge. First, you have notitia. That's the content or the data of faith, knowing the essentials of who Christ is and what he did.
And second,
assensus. That's the mental assent or agreement to the truth of that data.
But the sources make a key point here. Even the devil possesses both notitia and assensus. He knows the truth of the gospel and is absolutely sure of it. So what is the third essential element?
The third is fiducia, and this is the whole ball game. Fiducia means personal trust and reliance. It's the heart embracing and relying on Christ and him alone for justification.
It's a movement of the will and the affections.
It is. So if you rely on your own cooperation or the strength of your own works or some combination of your merit plus Christ's merit, you lack that crucial singular reliance. You lack fiducia.
And this difference in reliance creates a total contrast in the logic God uses to justify someone.
A complete contrast. The Roman Catholic view is termed analytical justification. God declares the person just because, upon analysis, the person is inherently just. He looks inside and confirms, yes, you have cooperated successfully.
Whereas the Reformed view is called synthetic justification.
Right. Something is synthesized or added to the subject. That is the imputation of Christ's perfect righteousness. So God declares the sinner just because of what is added to their account.
He looks outward.
He looks outward to Christ's performance and declares the sinner righteous, not because of what they are in themselves, but because of the perfect merit that's been applied to them.
So, to just summarize these deep systemic differences, the contrast between the two systems is total. It's the difference between grace that is infused, which requires our cooperation,
versus grace that is imputed, which is just received by faith.
It's the difference between relying on your own inherent righteousness versus an alien righteousness.
It's grace plus merit versus grace alone.
And faith plus works versus faith alone.
And the consequence for you, the listener, really cannot be overstated. It all comes down to the question of assurance.
Right.
If your justification relies on the inherent righteousness you have to achieve through ongoing cooperation with infused grace, then genuine assurance of salvation is, well, it's impossible, because your obedience will never be perfect or guaranteed until the moment you die.
But if it rests entirely in Christ's external, perfect, imputed merit, a completed work finished 2,000 years ago, then assurance is possible.
It's possible because the ground of your justification can't be taken away by your imperfect performance.
And this is why the disagreement was so fierce. This is why Paul, in the Bible, used such strong condemning language when he was addressing the addition of human works to the gospel. In Galatians 1, he pronounces an anathema, a curse, on anyone who preaches a different gospel.
He saw the addition of works as destroying the sufficiency of Christ.
It's just staggering to realize that this single technical distinction tore Western culture apart, and we have to note the immense historical gravity of this. At the Council of Trent, the Roman Catholic Church used that exact same term, anathema, to condemn the Reformed doctrine of justification by faith alone.
Both sides understood they were defending what they believed was the biblical gospel against a damnable heresy.
It remains, as Luther feared, something we are always prone to forget, because our human nature just defaults toward earning our way.
That's so true. Think about his observation. To truly appreciate Christ, the eternal righteousness, is an everlasting lesson that cannot be finished in this life.
So, given the complexity of this historical debate and that strong human desire for control and for effort, we'll leave you with this final, provocative thought. What parts of your own worldview about effort, worthiness, and reward make it most difficult for you to grasp a system of salvation based entirely on a righteousness that is absolutely alien to you? Think about that as you continue your own journey.